Are y'all still awake? Good afternoon, good evening, right? I'm gonna need a little bit of energy here. You guys happy to be here? Yes, yes. Thank you guys so much for coming here at Startup Boston Week. This has been great so far. Hopefully, you guys have been getting something out of the sessions so far. Yes, yes. I see a lot of head nods. Head nods. Yes. So, my name's Jacob. I'm a founder of Proctor, which is a residential property management company. And this whole event has been super special to me. I just moved here 3 weeks ago, just got out of the Air Force to do something a little bit scary, start a startup, right? And being able to be around people like this here, this whole week has been really inspiring to me. I'm really looking forward to the panelists that we have here today. Talk about things that I know are going to be applicable to me. Um, but before we dive in, I wanted to thank again Suffolk University for donating this awesome space that we have here. Um, None of this happens without a bunch of people and donors putting things together. And so they have been really instrumental in everything that we're doing. So if you or anybody that you know might be interested in exploring entrepreneurship, they have a ton of programs and opportunities. So be sure to stop by their table at the vendor hall if you're interested in any of those, and even if maybe you're looking to maybe help students that might be coming here, they have opportunities for that too. So make sure to check in with them. But without further ado, I'll hand it off to Sherry and we'll get started here.
Hi, welcome everyone to our panel this afternoon. We're going to talk about what it means to design and release product that lasts and lasts. We have a great set of panelists here, and we're going to give a short bio since we don't need to do the whiteboard because our name is and our headshots and contact information is already behind us. A little about me, I'm Sherry Palazzo. I am the founder and startup advisor for Saplings Consulting. My background is in mechanical engineering and new product development, and I've been designing new products from a wide range of products for 29 years, and probably from HP, GE, Bose, and then went to startup 9 years ago. I currently work with many startups. I've probably worked with close to 70 of them, so I see a different perspective on the differences and similarities between startups and what they struggle with. A lot of the products I've worked on has been launched to market, and so that's why I sit here today, so that we can talk about the difference between what you're doing in a startup versus when you have to launch a real product and it has to do well in the field.
Hi, John Umina here, VP of Engineering at Alteros. And, oh, sorry, have to speak more closely to the microphone. Okay, I'll start over. John Umina, Vice President of Hardware Systems Engineering at Alteros, also co-founder of my own company, 3 Labs, a consulting and contracting firm, engineering. I've been with Sherry, working with Sherry for many years. I started my career at a company called Panametrics, a small flow meter company in Waltham, Mass. Got acquired by General Electric. That's where, no, actually the second time at GE is when I started working with Sherry. Left General Electric for a while to a company called Artisan Industries, doing large pressure vessels. After about 5 years there, went back to GE. That's where Sherry and I met. And then after Sherry left and went to Alteros, I followed Sherry to Alteros, and that's where I still am today. I've worked on products that are very small, that you can hold in the palm of your hand, little sensors. I've worked on, as I said, large pressure vessels that are hundreds of thousands of pounds, things in between. Currently at Alteros, working on aerostats, which is a really fun and cool product to work on. And yeah, excited to be here.
Great. I'll go next. Hello, everyone. My name is Raymond Carver. I'm the VP of Business Development for a company called Factorial Energy. We're a battery technology company based out of Boston, and we develop next-generation batteries for mostly mobility applications. So my background is in chemistry. I'm also a battery scientist, and previously I worked at BMW. And I think from a product perspective, I've just seen many very long cycle products. So things that take a long time to market can take multiple years, and I think we'll spend some fun time speaking about this today.
Hello, my name is Praveen Sahai, founder of Wave Equity Partners. The fund started about 10 years ago. Factorial is one of the portfolio companies that we have. I'm a director in this company. I started my career as a nuclear physicist and then studied geophysics, and then did a variety of different roles in oil and gas and steel and power industries, joined the Indian Civil Services. I was at the police in the role of a battalion commander. Then I went to work with the United Nations in Africa. I helped manage the elections for the country of Mozambique during their first ever democratic elections in the mid-90s. Got a UN Peace Medal, turned out to be a very successful mission of the United Nations. And then came to the US, got education again, went to University of Chicago for the MBA, and unintentionally landed up in the investment industry. So I've been in venture capital for about 25 years now. And then founded Wave to focus exclusively on investing in manufacturing companies. We'll tell you more about it.
Amazing. So you have a wide range of experience here. We're going to do something a little non-traditional. I have some questions. So the panelists are going to fill out information on the whiteboard, and then we're going to share it with you. So panelists, how many years of work experience do you have, and list them out? I know we kind of went over it quickly. I didn't put Alteros on.
Can we just hold it up? Like
Yeah.
My list will not fit here, so I just number of years.
Excellent. Okay, another number question. How many products have you worked on or been involved with over your career? What, you got it wrong the first time?
I just want a little bigger. Yeah.
So we come to the table with
Dozens, yeah.
with a lot of experience. And that's why I'm really excited about this panel, because we have real life experience in what the challenges of doing this is. All right, panelists, on the scale of introvert to extrovert, from a 1 for an introvert, 10 to extrovert, where would you put yourself?
You have to take mine.
What do we got? I'm a 7 to 8.
With an 8.
8, 5, 9.
And, yeah.
Yeah. And my joke on this one is that I work with all engineers, and so they think I'm like a 12. Last one is, what's your favorite activity outside of work, and how often do you do it?
Just one.
No, as many as you want.
Oh, you were much more specific.
I don't know. I'm having a hard time.
All right, I wrote down, because I can't read. Oh, meditate. Oh, you're good. I'm spotty on mine. It does bring me joy, and it resets me, and I go weeks and months without doing it, and then I'll go into a focus time, and then I'm doing it like every day. Currently trying to figure out watercolor. It's not fun. What about yours?
Oh, I had, well, I enjoy doing off-road dirt biking and that kind of stuff. Actually kind of feeds into some of this making things last, because it's such a rough and you have to have such a durable, piece of machinery when you're out there. I like doing a lot of DIY home stuff and hanging out with the family. Those are my things.
I would just add outdoor sports. I don't have to have as much time as I wish to, but things like surfing, kite surfing, hiking, this is what really excites me.
I was lucky to learn yoga 40 years ago, and I've been doing it ever since. But the mix of yoga has shifted from physical exercises to meditation now.
And you make it a priority to do 2 hours every day?
So I can't live without it.
That's amazing. We need to talk. You can set new goals for me. All right, we're gonna move into the core questions now. All right, panelists, what is your favorite company or product you've worked on and why? Praveen, you wanna take it first?
I was pushing the mic a bit.
No, you need to leave it right there.
So Factorial is clearly, one of the favorite products. But let me talk about something very different from Factorial. A product which you would think does not deserve or is not good enough to be a new generation product, a water heater. So a company called IntelliHot in Chicago, they took the water heater that are used, in residential and commercial applications, like for hotels, and they came up with a design that made the water heaters more, efficient by 40%. So reduce the energy consumption of water heaters by 40%. Also made it a lot more durable and robust. Most of the water heaters fail because of calcination and sedimentation and scaling of the water minerals that forms around the heating elements. They made a water heater that has zero scaling in it. So if you look at even the most ordinary daily use products that consume tremendous amount of resources, energy, water, minerals, etc., there is scope for innovation in everything.
Raymond, how about you?
I will still pick solid-state batteries, what we do at Factorial. Not because of Factorial, but really because I spent my entire career kind of like researching and developing it. So when I started doing my PhD, it was really like a very academic topic. There were it was super niche, not a lot of people were talking about it. It was far from production. Just yesterday and now we had an actual vehicle, Mercedes EQS, going 1,200 kilometers or 800 miles on a single charge with our battery cell. And I took this all the way from really like truly lab through BMW, a lot of startup technology scouting, into now real world application. And that's just really exciting.
That must be really rewarding.
When we start selling it, it will be more rewarding.
Yeah, so my favorite product I've worked on, my favorite thing I've worked on is kind of like asking me what's my favorite food. And the answer is I can't pick one. Everything, I like so many different things for so many different reasons. And I think if I had to pick one, I would probably say what I'm currently doing with the aerostats at Alteros. And the reason I say that is because it is such a large and complex system that essentially
I back you up and just explain to people what an aerostat is.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And what your company does, you have to explain that first.
Okay, I will. So basically, an aerostat is essentially like a blimp. However, it's tethered to the ground, so it stays in one location in the air. And what we do is we provide what we call a super tower, which is a tethered blimp, as I said, that carries, in general, many different payloads. One particular payload would be like a telecommunications payload. So you could quickly deploy, for example, one use case would be to quickly deploy telecommunications in an area that has just had a disaster, for example, and the whole cell network is down. You could bring one of these over, and the amount of time it takes to put helium in a balloon, essentially, you could have it up in the air, and it'll fly through various weather. The system that we do is autonomous, so it'll launch itself, it'll monitor weather, it'll monitor conditions, it'll dock itself when necessary. You can dial in a mission. So there's a lot of tech going into actually what's kind of an old product that's existed in the world for a very long time, a hot air balloon or a helium-filled balloon. But back to why I like it. I like it because there is so much different parts of it, right? Like I mentioned I worked on pressure vessels. Although most pressure vessels I've worked on have very thick steel walls that hold thousands of PSI, this is a fabric structure, but it's still a pressure vessel. So I get to deal with that type of things. I mentioned I like working with sensors you can hold in your hand. The entire system's outfitted with sensors. So I'm dealing with that on a daily basis. The algorithms to utilize all of that data need to be developed, and all of these things need to be robust. They need to, the whole point of it is that you can fly through, a lot of weather and kind of rough conditions, and you can have a lot of uptime. So, yeah, I'll stop myself, but that's
So the
really my
technology
thing.
challenge of it.
Yeah, in all different ways. in
Okay,
all
and this is
different
how we're
aspects,
different
right.
because we work at the same company. My special part of why Alteris was great is it was a sandbox for me to play in, and this happens with startups in general. Like you're just trying many things and trying to solve so many problems. So I'm as proud of the team we built and the infrastructure and operations to grow a company. When I joined, it was like 15, and we're up. I don't work there anymore, up over 50, and figuring that out, it was like one giant 9-year puzzle for me, and that's what I got out of it. My other favorite project, which is completely on the other side of the scale, is when I was working at Bose. I was in their headphone division, and I was put on a project that was literally like a blank sheet of paper. The chief scientist was like, I have this idea, designed it, got it to market, sold millions, but the moment where it went to market and the Bose physical store still existed, and I walked in and I could see it on the stand, and I put it on my head, and then the salesperson came over and they were like, can I help you? I was like, how is this connector behaving? And they're like, why are you asking these questions? I'm like, because it's mine. So that was my highlight. Amazing. We're here today to talk about building products that last. What do you think actually, let's do a quick poll. Who are startup founders in the room? Really good representative. Who works at a startup? Cool. And who is thinking of joining startups? Anybody else? Did I miss anyone? Great. So some of the challenges of doing that is when you're first doing a startup, the first thing is to get a product ready, right? And what you do to get that one product or that first prototype or whatever, you're willing to do anything and everything to get it working, because a working prototype means you have something to show a customer, a potential investor, whatever, right? We are sitting in front of you and saying, okay, that's step one. There's many other steps until you're actually making product that is manufacturable, assemblable, serviceable, et cetera. So panelists, my question is, what do you find is the biggest challenge going from that prototype pilot state into production? Want to take it?
Yeah, I'll start with that. So I think the biggest challenge is that, so there's this life cycle that companies go through, right? And as Sherry said, the very first thing you do is you need an idea, you need a product. Once you get that down, then the next thing you need to do is bring it to life as quickly as possible. Essentially, you want to do a proof of concept for all your investors, for your potential customers, and so forth and so on. And then you hope that that is what gains you some traction so that you can build the company up around it and get into a steady state sort of production environment. What I like to do when going through those stages is I like to early on hire folks that understand that steady state, but also can operate in the, I have to cut all that process and all that stuff out. I don't have the luxury of having that. I need to get it done today. And so, I've seen plenty of times when people understand that steady state in the end, but they don't know how to, bridge that gap to get there. So that is one key aspect, is finding the right people who know how to get you from here to there. I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges. And knowing, I oftentimes say you got to take it in baby steps. It's hard to take these huge leaps. It's actually sometimes not really helpful to, track something to the nth degree where, there is a good enough state between where you are and getting to that level of control. So it's really the team in my head. It's getting the right
How do you find
group.
those people?
It's a lot of that for me is my network and branching out, and I'm kind of, one of the things that I really like is my experience in the past, where I said I've worked for companies as large as GE. Alteros was the smallest company I worked for, aside from my own, which is just me and my two brothers, really. But and then some of the companies I worked that I mentioned before are mid-sized between there. So throughout my career, I've always sort of had a mental list of the people I've encountered as I've gone through all of these different experiences, and really said, if I had a dream team, what would it be? And that's kind of, one way I constantly keep this list in my mind, constantly try to think about how I would pull a team together in that state. So it's not something for me, it's not something I wake up and say, oh, I got to do this. It's something I'm constantly doing and always thinking about.
Raymond, for you, we talked in the in prepping of this that you work with some big companies who are expecting you to be possibly more mature than you are, or what do you see those challenges between that pilot to full production?
Yeah, constantly. I would say two things. One is when you go from prototype to production, you lose a lot of design freedom that you previously had. And then the second one is that people actually want to use it. So, but how they intend it. So when you ship something to a customer, they have their own idea of how they want to use it, and they will want to do things with it that you have not intended for them to do, or you have not tested.
It wasn't in your spec?
And yeah, so you haven't even developed a spec, or your spec is not comprehensive enough, and suddenly you're saying, hey, you can't do this. And they're like, oh, we just bought it. Like, of course we can do it. So you can't pull it back, and then which leads me to the second part, which is a design freedom. So when you do a prototype, it's a prototype because you can't do one prototype, you do another prototype, another one, and you trial and error, and you try to improve it over time, and you try all those different components. But for production, it's typically, so we work in a business where people really need thousands of those things. And when you buy parts and when you purchase components, materials, you buy tons of them, you buy a lot of units. So if at the end of the day you decide, hey, like this type of welding, this type of tab doesn't work for me, this actually leads to a problem in my product, but your warehouse is full of this. Like, you already bought them and you can't give back. And this manufacturer that specifically designed and manufactured them for you, they're not taking it back. So you're suddenly stuck. So you have to find a way. How can I rework this? How can I repurpose this? And it's not as flexible as you might think, especially the larger the scale is.
Yeah, definitely.
This mechanics that you're covering is very important, but I would like to, just for a couple of minutes, really lift the conversation to, first of all, I'm very impressed with the amount of entrepreneurs who are in the room, and truly admire that you are focusing on the hard tech or the manufacturing aspects of things. There is good news and bad news. Let me share the bad news for you first. A couple of questions. In China, the Politburo, which is the key, the top decision-making body, there is a standing committee of the Politburo that consists of 9 members. How many of those 9 members do you think are engineers?
No.
All of them. In the US, there is a Congress of 100, senators. How many of those senators do you think have engineering degrees? 2. Okay. If you use a very loose definition of engineering and include data manipulation and data engineering, the entire Congress has 4% of members who have engineering degrees. Another question, another example, both China and USA decided to build a high-speed rail project in their countries. The Chinese project, and this was 2008, the Chinese project was to build a high-speed rail connection between Shanghai and Beijing. And the US project was to connect Los Angeles and San Francisco. The Chinese project was completed in 3 years. By 2011, the line opened with a total cost of $36 billion. Where do you think the California project is now? Okay, it'll probably never get completed, and the current budget estimation is $127 billion if it ever gets completed. You think about solar, you think about battery, you think about electric vehicles, you think about battery technologies. China has a complete lockup. Their ownership of the value add in these industries anywhere from 60% to 90% of the supply chain. That's what you're competing with if you're investing your time in manufacturing. Solar was invented in the US in the 70s, early 70s. It never got commercialized. The Japanese were the first ones to actually commercialize the battery. The solar technology. The Germans really pushed it in the marketplace, and now 90% of the solar value chain is controlled by Chinese.
So are you saying that that is the bigger challenge to get from prototype to production because the competition in China is so much faster and more?
But then, what is the good news in
Okay.
all of this, right? And the good news is the plurality and the ideation and the innovation that takes place in the US ultimately is going to be the predictive factor for the continuing progress of this country. The rise of AI is going to completely demolish the value proposition of software startup companies. I was in Copenhagen 2 weeks ago, and there were so many companies and entrepreneurs who were talking about, they had a company of 10 people doing tens of millions of revenue, and the team basically had one, person in every department, right? One person in product development, one in, sales, and one other in distribution, one in customer services, and they were basically using AI to do everything. And my son started an AI-based startup company. And when he started his company, he had 2 competitors, and within 2 years, he had 50 competitors. And then Microsoft launched a product doing exactly the same thing. So there is zero barrier to entry now. It is impossible to build a company in the software industry which is going to continue to have, generate revenues with a decent margin. You see companies going public now that have hundreds of millions in revenue and still massive amount of negative cash flows. Why? Because they're spending all of that money, not in product development, not in winning customers, but in marketing so that their head can stay above the maddening crowd of thousands of companies that are doing exactly the same thing. The entire value proposition of software companies is collapsing. And the only future, for the industry, for the entrepreneurs, and for the country is in the hardware, the physical intelligence, building physical products. So if your competitors have a lockup on the lithium-ion supply chain, I firmly believe and I know that the next generation of batteries are not going to involve any of those materials, any of those metals. It will be completely innovative product that will probably use a version of semiconductor to really generate batteries that will have a much higher performance and longevity and durability than the current lithium-ion batteries.
And so leaning into that, what does this group have to worry about being in the hardware space in order to make sure that they can meet that demand?
All right, so I'll transfer the mic over to you.
No, I want you to answer the question. So,
but you think about solar, the next generation solar will not be using the silicon manufacturing process that you have today. There are already perovskite and other materials which are providing generating products which are going to be 80% cheaper than the current solar. And you can completely escape away from the clutches of the current supply chain controls. And I can talk about every industry. And innovation is the only way out. And so think about not competing on the current turf. You cannot outcompete Asian companies on their same products. You have to completely do out-of-box thinking. And the innovations that we see, that we come across, blows our minds. And so I admire the fact that you are thinking differently, and you're not just thinking about just another software company, because that is a death knell.
So we just talked about some of the challenges to go from that small scale, one off, two off kind of thing into mass production. My personal story on that is it's easy, and like Raymond said, there's low expectations on the first couple. And when you're working and interacting with your customers, if you do that well, you're going to make sure that they also understand their expectations are lower because it's first run, whatever. But once you get into full scale and you're selling to multiple people, customers, millions, however the quantity is, depending on your product, the expectations have changed. And so that is the challenge I've seen, is that when you can do whatever you want and hand wave around it and it's fine, but once it actually hits the market, you are then setting higher expectations that are probably based on your competitors as well. So it's not just what you're doing for your own company, but you're also having to look at that and pull that together based on what general market expectations are. And that's what I've seen the highest problem. The other one that's a real challenge is getting from that one-off that you probably are hand building with a small team and moving it into a outsourced or mass manufacturing system. And that growth is really tough. It's just different set of skills, different equipment, different tests that you don't have to do when you're at small scale. While there are challenges, like Praveen is saying, in the hardware space, there are also some benefits when you can offer a product that can last and last. Can we talk about that a little bit?
I'll start again,
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah, so one of the things I think you're talking of the one-off and the low expectations on the first unit, and then the expectations climb as you get into more of a steady state production. But there's also the scenario that I've found myself in more than once, where the prototype, necessarily speaking, because of the cost, complexity, size, and scale of the product that you're working on, the prototype sort of is your first production product as well, where you need to put that in front of the customer. You need to deliver that to the customer. So I think that it's important to recognize that there's a huge kind of spectrum of types of products and the kind of funding you can get that you can utilize to develop the product and get to a production ready, state. And sometimes you get the ability to do multiple, trials, prototypes, whatever you want to call it, before you can put that in front of a customer. Sometimes you don't. So regardless, I just wanted to point that out. But regardless, I think one of the most impressive things you can do is have your product last in front of the customer, right? You really want to impress upon them the work you did, the fact that you've thought about things, whether it be, corrosion, like even in, when you're prototyping and you have a prototype and 2 months down the road there's a little corrosion on a piece, don't overlook that, because if you don't fix that, if you keep kicking that can down the road, when you get to your production state, you're still going to have corrosion on that piece, and that's not going to look good. That's not a lasting product. Steal from other industries on their standards and their approach to doing things. Like one very kind of simple explanation is like structural steel analysis, right? I'm a mechanical engineer, so this is kind of where my mind goes. There are a lot of standards that exist in the world for how to design a structure, what your factors of safety should look like, what types of treatment should be done on certain types of metal, what types of metal you should use in certain instances, galvanization versus paint, whatever the case may be. You really want to, again, try to work that stuff in as early as possible, because you want that look, feel, and durability to be in the product from day one for the customer. You don't want to have to go out and swap parts out in front of them or try to explain away, well, that really doesn't matter because of whatever,
And following up on that, you don't have to figure it out yourself, because a lot of people have already solved these problems.
Yes.
So don't waste your minimal time, energy, and money that you have at your startup solving problems that other people have done. It's okay to copy them.
Yeah, that's where I get back to the people thing, right? Yeah. I was actually once told you get penalized in school for copying, but you get promoted at work. So find people who know and that you can cheat off of.
I actually want to add to the expectation setting, because I think that's super important when you deliver to customers prototypes or products, because so for some customer cycles that are really long, they will support you either all the way, or they will come and go. You have some others showing up, some others going. But what really makes them stick if you match expectations. but it's not necessarily their expectations, but you jointly set them. And that's super important that you kind of work on, like in my case, it's always been testing, right? Like you deliver a product, they want to test it. What exactly are they testing? Like define the scope with them, and don't fall for just trying to be the best or trying to like fulfill their ask from day one. Their expectations will be sky high, right? They will want everything for cheap
I know
and
what you're
for
talking about.
yeah. So if you just say yes, you set yourself up for failure because there's no way you can live up to it. Like you always test something that you're almost sure that you can deliver on. Like you want to be 99% sure, and even if you have to lower the
Oh,
scope.
I say 110. Yeah, you don't want to disappoint them, so you under promise and over deliver. So you want to have like 110% confidence level that you can do it.
Yeah, I think what you want, like it will be a tough negotiation or like back and forth in the beginning. But by the time they test your product, they forget about this, but they check all the boxes of your test, and then when you move forward, instead of just like having a lot of crosses, like a very challenging test, it just resonates differently with people's mind.
And have you done the negotiation with them to say like, okay, yes, we want to get it so that it meets 130 degree C environment, but we're only ready to hit 100. Can we test it 100 first?
Yeah, we do this all day. We like customers want to test each and everything, so constantly we're negotiating testing scopes and mostly lowering them just because people see something in the news and they kind of take the best of everything and then they want this to be yours, but they're ignoring a lot of other boundary conditions. And it's your job to educate them on this. Like you know this best.
And then if you do it well, you also negotiate what the next step is, assuming you can pass that set of specs or test criteria, because the transition from finishing something to what to do next is a huge loss of time. So if you're really smart about it and you say, great, we are in agreement of what's on this piece of paper, we're going to prove to you we do that, and if we do that, then you are going to X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, and you actually want to do it not when you hit the mark, but you want to have this defined by the end, because else you're just wasting time negotiating and talking all over. They have a gap in your journey.
The stuff you're talking about is actually the most important part of the journey of a hard tech company or a manufacturing company. There is a very strong difference between the path of a software company versus the path of a hardware company. In software industry, I mean, you all know this. The companies will go, the founders will, create an alpha product and they will get a couple of alpha users and then tweak the product and learn with the customers, and they will continue to tweak the product for 5 years before they get the right product market fit. In hardware companies, you don't have that privilege of tweaking a product on a continuous basis. The founder of your company, Alex, when he won his first grant from the state of New York, the advice given to him was, don't spend any of this money in R&D. Spend all of this money on air tickets. Fly to your prospective customers and learn what they have to tell you so that when you're designing a product, you already know what the customers want to see. And that really became the mantra of the company. And that has to be the mantra of every company in hardware industry.
You don't get as many chances, so
You
have
don't
to be more
get
thoughtful
a
about
second chance. Forget about many chances.
No, I want to back that up.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought somebody had a question. I want to back that up. The simple explanation is it's really hard to change the foundation of a house after the house has been built. So as hardware engineers, I think, and I think that is the critical difference between hardware and software. You have to look way down the road. You have to set your concepts as early as you can, and you need to hope that you get it right so that you don't have to change some foundational part of what you're doing. That's absolutely critical. And
So,
also,
for investors, in software companies, if they're not generating revenue by year 3, they're disappointed. In hardware companies, it could be 10 years before you generate your first revenue.
As an investor, is that what you're expecting, a 10-year commitment to them?
Well, it depends on where you are investing. So I'm talking about the founding of the company
Yeah.
to 10 years. But investors like us who are, coming in with $25 million of capital allocation, we are going in much later. We are not in there at the founding of the company. So different investors, come in at different stages.
Yeah. Since this is Startup Boston Week, let's talk about how you balance what startups focus on, which is going fast, versus building something that lasts?
You need a crystal ball. I mean, you really need to, and that's why I say you need the right people, because again, that curve that you're going through, you want that proof of concept, I think, as a startup. You want to get that thing out there that shows what you can do, that you have the capabilities of getting there, but you need the vision that understands what a steady state looks like, and has the experience from the industry that says this is what the product should look like, when you're fully through your design cycle. So, that's the crystal ball in my mind.
Raymond?
Yeah, I think I mean, by last, I would assume you just want to make customers happy, right? Sometimes they need to stick with you for a long, long time. So really listening to customers, as Praveen said, like going there, asking them questions, and being open-minded to change the way also you think about things, and being open to learn. I think this is absolutely critically important. And I'm also thinking that some of the challenges that you feel like you have to tackle, they might not be challenges at all. And then some of the problems or things that you ignore, they're actually the real challenges. So like many early stage startups, I see them trying to solve a certain problem, which like is a PowerPoint problem. Like it doesn't actually exist. Like no one's really thinking about this, but they just haven't tried it. They just haven't built it yet, and they haven't had a customer say to them yet, hey, this doesn't work like this. Like we actually, like you're solving the wrong thing,
Yeah.
and you can waste a lot of time and resources on that.
I look at it as, again, your startups have limited resources, people and money, and time. And so it's a continuous risk assessment evaluation. What is the highest risk that we're carrying right now, and how do we mitigate that? Because if you try to worry about all the problems at once, you run out of time, people, money. If you can focus and say, these are the most critical, highest risk areas, let's tackle those, you're gonna get farther along in order to balance out what you're doing with a prototype that you can do quickly, de-risk that, and then you can take that knowledge and transfer it to the final product. And then ideally, you get to iterate at least one more time, and it depends on where you are with money and time.
Yeah,
So sorry, go ahead.
I just want to add an example because it sounds really cliche, but I think, for example, we were looking at different compression pads for battery module, and when our team scouted it, we couldn't find the one that we're looking for. So you scout further, you talk to suppliers, you talk about things, and then you spend some time suddenly with a polymer company that says, hey, we will custom develop this thing for you. And then you're like, oh, wait, I thought I was developing a battery cell. And suddenly you're developing this type of like compression pad, which is like this one component of your thing. Meanwhile, a customer says, hey, we just use this. Like we have it. It's actually a different industry, or it's a different material that you just haven't scouted yet. And but many of your customers have this, and especially with very complex systems. It's worth just spending more time talking about it and understanding like what are the real issues instead of trying to solve this one thing with the solution that you think is right.
So how to balance speed versus
Thoroughness.
and there are really interesting ways to do it. When I think about my portfolio, and different companies have done it differently depending on what the base platform is. Look, I said before that it could be 10 years before we start generating a revenue. So what's the upside for hardware companies? And there are two very strong upsides that you don't have in the software industry. One is very strong barrier to entry. Now, if you are working with your customers and you are working to the specs that they need and that they want, it by definition means that you're getting locked in as their partner. And removing you from that partnership is going to be very, very difficult for anybody else. Also, reverse engineering what you have, in theory is possible, but I've never seen it happen. Mm-hmm. I talked about the water heating company. I mean, forget about Factorial, which is very, very specialized IP and know-how. Even the water heater company, after 10 years, there is no other product like this in the marketplace. So very high barrier to entry.
When you were working with the startups in your portfolio around that, do you tell them to go ahead and like go full launch into the IP and protection, or trade secret, or How do you, a bunch of the startups I work with are like, we're in stealth mode. We can't tell anybody, and it's hardware. We can't tell anybody what we're doing. And I look at it and go, no one's going to be able to catch up anytime
Exactly.
soon.
Yeah.
So how do you balance, or what advice do you give this room around that?
We'll come to that in a moment. The second big advantage is massive market opportunities. Whether you're talking about water heater, or EV batteries, or solar, or decarbonized concrete, whatever you have, there are existing markets that are hundreds of billions of market size. And if you're working with the key market leaders in those industries, and you get spec'd in, you get designed in, you have you can rise, go very far very quickly after you commercialize a product. So how do of course you have to pay a lot of attention to making sure that the product you're coming out has the right specs and the right performance. But in order to accelerate the progress, you're basically talking about 3 dimensions. One is IP. So how do you solidify and expand your IP? The other one is manufacturing. How do you expand your manufacturing and get scale? And the third one is market penetration and distribution. So how do you get in front of more markets and more product markets and more geographical markets? Because any product in the hardware you talk about, it's a global industry. And the key to all of them are strategic partnerships. So when you're thinking about IP, with the customers, we have an example of a company in Boston called Windesco, where ABB is one of their key investors. And ABB last quarter transferred a lot of their own IP to Windesco because they're collaborating on a product. And that is of immense advantage. And when it comes to production, some of the companies we see are making a decision. Some of the earlier companies, like Factorial, for example, is making certain components, but they're not going to build their own manufacturing plant. They are going to be leveraging existing manufacturing suppliers in the global markets to get their products out. We have a recent company investment, a company called Mayman. They are modifying the internal combustion engine, the car engine, as generators that run on water and ethanol, not on gasoline or diesel. But they are manufacturing, of course, they made their own prototypes, but now they have developed supply chains of ICE manufacturers, internal combustion engine manufacturers, in USA, in Europe, in Asia, that are going to be building the product to their own specs. And they have actually now created a certification program where companies like Vattenfall or Volvo or the companies in the US that are manufacturing the product, or companies in India, are being certified on their products so that they can make the engines to their specs. And the third one is distribution. We have a company in Germany that makes very interesting chemicals. They created a subsidiary in Taiwan. They're creating a subsidiary in the Middle East, in Saudi Arabia, one in USA. And all of these subsidiaries are going to be manufacturing the product and utilizing their own existing supply chains and supply chain partners to get the product in all the different markets where the product needs to go. So building partnerships is really the key to accelerate, not only to survive, but to actually accelerate your access to the market.
I always say that the challenge of startup is having the tech, money, and sales or business development all progressing equally at the same time. It's the toughest challenge, but that's how you succeed. Thank you, panelists, for that. I'm going to open up for the last 12 minutes for questions, if anybody have anything. You choose. Go.
Hi. My question is specific to the software companies. Sorry. So, to Praveen, that you mentioned that your son is working in AI, and you told like software is dead and penetrating.
Software has become so powerful that it's hard to make money with it.
Yeah. So, your son is going into AI. So, did you ask him to move into hardware stuff, or why did you allow him to go into AI?
We don't allow our children to do anything. They pick their own minds. But he actually, he shut down his startup, and he joined Scale AI, which is a very well-established company in the AI supply chain, which is a smarter move. So, AI will be, is currently being dominated by a few companies. That dominance will also go away. We have people talking about LLMs, and, we had 2, and now and then we went to 10, now we have dozens of LLMs around the world, and there will be hundreds. And so, that dominance will also, there will of course be 2 or 3. I mean, in search engines, you have a consolidation. So the consolidation always happens in these industries. And there will be a very, very few number of companies that will be winners. But that also means that 98, 99% of the companies will either be acquired or go under.
Hi, I'm Nathan. I'm a founder in the medical device industry. And I have a question about AI and hardware. And I was wondering whether it is only a matter of time before it can transform that industry similar to software, where you have it in every step of the process from ideation to manufacturing. And also what stage is it kind of currently involved in those things?
I'm not an expert in any of those industries, but it's very clear that AI is already impacting the ideation and the development of products in every industry. You've heard the term physical AI, which is where the real, I think, wealth creation is going to take place now, in terms of robotics, in terms of automation, in terms of intelligence, on the edge, in the true applications. So, application of AI to make real things rather than just software or resume writing or, a business plan or stuff like that. So physical AI, and so, that could be a very interesting area, actually. The whole industry of medical devices is going to get transformed now.
From a hardware perspective, AI is working into the support tools that we use to make physical products. So whether that is an AI of like optimizing modeling or analysis or whatever, we're starting to see that work into our day-to-day. Other thing is, as startups, having a fully developed AI story, because that's what you're going to get asked about by investors, is like, how are you using AI? And it's not just ChatGPT. So look at that from a strategy perspective. How do we incorporate some AI messaging or strategy into what we're doing, even if it's just hardware?
A lot of the hardware design that I've done is trying to create a system that outputs or correctly collects data so that another part of the system, be it algorithm aspects or whatever, can utilize that information. It's clean data, it's not affected, or sensitive to other things that are going on in the system, whatever the case may be. And then you can utilize that information to affect something else, right? The AI stuff that's going on has kind of changed that game a little bit from the perspective of what do I need to achieve on the hardware side for an input to the algorithm, right? And in some ways, I used to not like the term, well, we'll fix it in software, because that was
That was
always
a
the
running
thing.
joke. Software is easy.
Right. Software can fix where I missed on the hardware side of things, but that's not such a bad thing. It's getting easier now to do that. It's getting easier to take that information in and section it out and utilize it. So I think it's going to change how hardware engineers need to think about what systems they're designing so that they can integrate with the rest of the system that they're working in.
Any other questions?
Thank you. Finally got the mic. That's a really great conversation we have until right now. And by the way, I'm Sam. We are trying to create these drone shows that are like 100x cheaper, and people can afford, so that people can afford it, and companies can make money out of their ads by making them as like NFTs. So in that perspective, if I could ask a couple of questions real quick, is like, is it good to spend time and money to create these military-grade products, which is like not needed, but I mean like products that last long, or to create products that are like good enough and replace them while spending some money on recycling? When it comes to like physical products.
It depends on your business plan. I've seen both approaches work. So when I'm working with other startups, Are they looking to build a product that lasts 20 years under military conditions? Or are they looking at it to say, no, I want to take the alternate business plan, which is to make it cheaper, faster, and replaceable, but that's part of my service. There is no right or wrong answer unless your customer's expectations are that it lasts for 20 years.
No, especially if you're, in a product category which is evolving very quickly. You make a drone today, it will probably be completely, overstepped by newer inventions within 2 years. So, in a fast-moving industry like that, you need to be agile.
Yeah, and that continues my second question. It's like, so sorry. When starting a startup like this, is it? Oh, thank you. When starting a startup like this, is it good to go for IP all the time, or like is it better to have like aggressive designing or like marketing strategies and making it as an open source?
Somebody?
I can take it. Open source is tough from an investor perspective. So if you decide that that's faster and I'm going to do take the open source approach, then when you go to try to raise money, they're going to be like, why someone else could do exactly what you're doing right now? Why am I going to invest in you? From a fast to market, and we're talking about pilot and prototyping, I agree with you. There's a speed to market where you can test and learn from that faster. But I'd still want you to have some kind of IP or trade secret underneath it that someone else couldn't copy.
Thanks to the black box when it comes to AI, we are like both software and hardware industry when it comes to like drones and
Yeah.
software that's gonna fly the drones up in the air and do the patterns. So like software that they cannot copy it, whereas hardware they can like look at it.
Yeah, so then your business model could be even buy it off the shelf because our secret sauce is in the software and how they coordinate with each other.
I have time for maybe one more question.
No. Your hand was up.
I just want to say you scared the hell out of me. I do have a software startup. I don't know why I didn't realize this is an engineering session, but I don't have a question. I just wanted to say maybe it was a good thing that I was at this session and hearing that. So I can have a
let me.
backup plan.
So when I say, it's very difficult to make money with software, I'm talking about, making a software product that you think will become, standard of the industry in CRM or sales or, product development or whatever. But there is still a very reliable way to make money in software, which is to turn your software company into a services business that solves very specific problem for a niche in the marketplace and does it in a way where you are working very closely with your customers, right? So, he talked about, drones that do, specific, shows and all that. That's a very specific application. And if you get hold of 5 customers, that are some of the biggest organizers of these events internationally, and you become the, company of choice because they like what you do, you're very responsive to them, they're almost like an extension of their event, organization, you have a very reliable way to make money. But Joe, don't try to invent a product where, quickly you will have 100 other competitors. The reliable way to play in the software industry is to be, again, be aligned very closely at the hip with some of the key customers in those industries.
Yeah, one more question.
My name is Mike. I'm a mechanical engineer, so kudos to John. And my question centers around communicating to investors about long-term strategy in something that is maybe unclear where I'm at with a lower TRL product. So my product is in 3D printing and combustion, and I see it with a lot of interest right now for the research of it in the defense sector. And that's something that will be the benchhead market. But I see the real value in Mars, so in situ research, resource utilization, very niche research. It's not something that's very well developed, but in the future, there's a lot of market cap there. So if I have another market that springs up 10 years down the road, how would I communicate that to an investor? Because as an engineer, I think errors stack and propagate up through the chain. As an engineer, I'm thinking 2 steps ahead, and I'm not even 1 step there yet. So John,
What
I'd
TRL
ask
are you?
Sorry?
What's your TRL level? Does everyone know what technical readiness level is? Started, I believe, military-wise in NASA. TRL 1 is like basically an idea research project, and then it steps you through until you get to a TRL 9, which is on the NASA spec is you've tested it in space, but it's a common assessment tool that we talk about in startups of like how far along are you in your product development. So what did you say, TRL what?
4?
Okay, so you have a prototype that's working.
Yes. So out
yep.
of 4, I'd ask communicating that long-term strategy to investors. What do they see from an engineer? And then as an engineer, John, what would you say to investors?
I would say, I think we've had a couple themes that are going through here. One theme has been expectations, right? And it's all about that. And so what your investors, and I'm not an investor, and to be honest, I kind of stay a little bit behind the curtain most of the time and don't do a lot of the investing aspects of things. But I do, obviously, have been in the startup for 10 years now, so I kind of know what that's about. But you really want to have the strategy that says, these are my customers that are going to purchase this now because they're used to using this, whatever the case may be, and understand their expectations and have them really, really dialed in so that you know that you can produce for them. Actually, let me take a step back. What they want to see is a growth opportunity, right? So you need to show that story. And to show that story, you say, this is where I'm going to start, because these people will buy today. There's no barrier to entry. There's no early adopter that I have to deal with, none of that kind of stuff. And once I get that in and I secure that deal, some of my money is going to go towards creating this other market that I ultimately want to get to, and no one else is there, and it's a huge market. I just need to create it. Nobody's asking for it necessarily right now. Maybe that's the case, maybe that's not the case, but it's going to be big when we get there. And so it's really that story that says, hey, I got to do this, and then I can do that, and then I can do this. And ultimately, in 10 years from now, this is going to be huge in a place that didn't even exist today, if that makes sense.
Can I add something more to it? I really like what he said. You're not thinking about an untapped resource that could be your biggest aid, which is advisors. So for all the companies in our portfolio, including Factorial, the real turning point was when they brought in a director or an advisor who was from the industry that you're trying to target. There are, very successful people, who have retired at the age of 65 after 30 years of industry experience, and they want to. This culture, the innovation ecosystem in the industrial markets had not really matured yet. In software industry, it has. In life sciences, it has, but not in the industrial markets. And you have, and the industrial markets are far bigger than IT or life sciences. So you have thousands of highly qualified, relatively young, like people in their 60s, who are looking to associate with the young generation that have truly breakthrough innovative ideas and help them. I was talking to somebody, I was trying to bring him on as an advisor to one of my portfolio companies last Friday, and he said, look, I'm in no position to take any formal obligation, but if the company CEO wants to talk to me for 1 hour every week, I'll be very happy to do that because I think I can really help this company, and I don't want any money or any equity in the company. You have a lot of people like that. And so tap those people, find those people.
The other thing you can think of is that there's different ways of funding things that are higher risk, and one of those are government grants. They are investing in you as a early stage startup, knowing that tech could benefit them. 10, 15 years down the road. And so they have these programs set up to be able to do that, whether that's SBIR, STTRs, or other things like that. So that's something you should look into as well.
Okay, thank you guys so much for coming. Thanks our panelists again. We want to thank you guys so much. I learned a lot today. I learned what an aerostat is. I appreciate that. I also learned that we need some engineers in Congress, and that we need to get better at building bridges. But again, thank you guys so much for all the wisdom that you guys imparted, and we'll be sure to take that here in our lives, I know, as we continue. A couple closing remarks. I'm actually going to end this pretty quick. The startup crawl is happening like literally right now. So if you're wanting to get involved in that, I recommend you go downstairs as soon as possible. So you, because I know there are limited spots there. But again, thank you guys so much. And one more round of applause for our panelists. And you guys are dismissed.
Hi.
Yeah.